when it comes to the University of Houston Cougars football team. They're coming off the heels of their bye week, and before that, a very exciting win on the road at Memphis that they're hoping can breed momentum for them heading into their third conference game of the season against the Navy Midshipmen, who we'll talk about in the next upcoming segment. We know how tricky they are to defend when it comes to what they do on offense, and Dana Horson talked about them on defense, how they like to disguise a lot of the stuff they do on that side of the ball as well. But when it comes to the bye week in particular, obviously when we think of bye, we think of a break from an outside perspective, no game week. But the players, the staff actually said it is a bit of a break in terms of not having to prepare specifically for an opponent, but it's not necessarily we're off for the week. Dana Horson said the players still had to practice during the week. They had a couple of days off towards the end of the week. And linebacker Donovan Mutin, who's one of not only the key players on the defense, but one of the key veterans on the team, talked about how it was crucial for him to not allow the bye week to get in that break mindset. Make sure you're staying focused, preparing your body, and really gearing up for the final 6 regular season games of the season. Houston's currently sitting at 1-1 in conference play, which stacks them up right in the middle of the American Athletic Conference. They're 7th by ranking, but they are tied at 500 with 4 other programs, and they're behind Cincinnati, UCF, and Tulane for that top spot in the American Athletic Conference. All 3 of those teams are undefeated, but all 3 of those teams will play each other for the tail end of the season. So at this point, really, the only thing the Houston Cougars can do is take care of their business and see where the cards lay at the end of the season. Dan, I'm going to go into a clip from Dana Horson when it comes to evaluations of the team at the bye week, because that was kind of the trending topic heading into the bye week. What adjustments will the Houston Cougars make, whether it's offensively, defensively? And Dana Horson had an interesting soundbite. Here's what he had to say when asked about bye week evaluation. Dana, after that game against Memphis, you talked about, with the bye week, it's always a good point in time to be able to evaluate what happened during the first 6 games. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that process. I'm sure it had to be, going back, watching film, what went well, what didn't. What was that process like just in terms of evaluating at the bye?
Oh, I just think that's too broad of a question to answer, to be honest with you. I'll give you something, but you do self-scout stuff every week. You go back and you look at where you're at, but what are you able to fix? That's an off-season question more than anything, So, the first half of the season has been competitive. Are we happy we're sitting here at 3-3? No. I mean, a couple of those games could have went either way. We could be 5-1. We could be 1-5. If we win at Tech, are we in a better place against Kansas? Probably. Does that have a difference in the outcome of the game? Maybe. I don't know. Ball bounces your way sometimes, like it did the last time that we played. Be happy about it. Use it to your advantage and get ready to prepare to go play the next game. It's always about what your preparation is for the next game. Mid-season assessments are fun to talk about, and you do some things self-scouting wise. What you can actually do about it is kind of tough.
There you heard head coach Dana Horson from the soundbite, a very interesting soundbite. Was there anything that stuck out to you, Dayon, just from that clip of Horson?
I mean, not much. He really didn't really touch up on much. He kind of said they kind of self-scout every week, in which you kind of expect that on a week-to-week basis. It's kind of not surprising. I wasn't really surprised, and nothing really stuck out. It was kind of a bland response. He kind of gave me something like he said, but I mean, it wasn't really much. I'm sure a bye week, they're off but game, but I'm sure they put a lot of work in film, lifting weights, getting stronger, some players resting, things like that.
Absolutely. And I asked a similar question to Doug Belk, and he gave me a bit of a better response, a much more in-depth response, but he talked about how really they used that bye week to be able to get specific focuses just in terms of what they can get better at. He said that there were in particular 3 different areas that they focused on during the bye week, and that was getting better at late game scenarios, specifically situational football, red zone execution, and 2-minute execution. And the last thing they did focus on was third down situations. And when you hear that from Doug, those are areas, not just the defense, but offensively as well. Just the team overall has struggled in a lot of those first 6 games of the season. I mean, 5 of those 6 games have come down to the final possession, and even going back to Memphis, where they were able to pull off the stops that they hadn't been able to the last couple of really the first 6 games of the season. I guess prior to that Memphis game, the first 5. It's a momentum that they're trying to build, and it's good to hear from Buck that they really focused in on those during that bye week.
And that's exactly what I've been saying on Let's Raise Cougars, on our podcast, of them getting better at situational football and complementary football. And so it was good to hear him say that, and kind of and which I know he's a good coach. I know film doesn't lie when he goes back. He's being realist with his players on different scenarios and situations like that. And so like the defense has played good. There's another step that they can get to play better. I know his availability. You talked about the loss of Art Green out for the rest of the year, right? Is that who's out?
No, Alex Hogan.
Alex Hogan. Yeah, Hogan. I mean, Alex Hogan. Yeah, it's Alex Hogan is out for the rest of the year. So filling in with that. But I think overall, this bye week came at a good time, and it was good to come off a win. So it's kind of some positive morale around the team, and they can kind of go into the second half of the season with some positivity going forward.
For sure. And really when it comes to the bye week, something that a lot of fans were kind of interested in was the offense, because we saw, again, going back to that Memphis game where, I mean, the offense had some bright spots before the fourth quarter, especially towards the end of the first half. And I caveat that because they were able to drive down the field at the end of the first half, couldn't punch it in for a touchdown. It looked like they were going to settle for a field goal, and then Bubba Baxa botched the kick. Well, it wasn't just on Baxa. The laces were facing towards the kicker, and but the kick was wide, was very wide on that attempt. So the Cougars came away with no points on that drive. But in that fourth quarter in particular, that's really where the Cougars saw a lot more from an offensive explosion standpoint. They put up 26 points against Memphis. They overcame that 19-point deficit. And I mean, give kudos again. One of the things that Belk said is that was a spark for that team against Memphis was that Clayton Tune scramble towards the end. It wasn't even towards the end. I think it was, I can't remember if it was before the Jace Rogers 100-yard return, kickoff return touchdown, or right before it or right after it. But there was a situation where it was a 4th and long. Yeah, it was a 4th and long, and it looked like Tune was going to get sacked by a couple of times, and then it looked like he was going to get tackled short of the sticks, and he picked up the first down. He rushed, I believe it was for 15 yards, and then they had another 4th down situation where this time he scrambled, didn't pick up the first down with his legs, but he was able to buy time with his legs to be able to hit a receiver down the field. Then lo and behold, Keyshawn Carter came up big for Houston in that fourth quarter. He got 2 touchdowns, including the go-ahead touchdown late in that game against Memphis. And again, they're hoping that can springboard them into a good run to end this season when it comes to conference play. But in particular, when it comes to that offense, a lot of fans have been calling for much more of an up-tempo style. And here's Dana Holgorsen talking specifically about potentially seeing that from the offense.
Do you feel like this offense is more productive up-tempo, or is it still a sort of a situational type deal?
Yeah, it's situational. I'm not going to commit to a fastball offense for the sake of just running a fastball offense. I think that's easy to defend. A lot of people do it, and a lot of people know how to defend it. So, I think we've got a plan with what we want to do offensively. We did go into that game wanting to pick up the pace some. We had talked about that. We're not going to just sit here and not change anything, regardless of my comments a couple weeks ago. I mean, we are going to continue to try to change things and spark us. And that was one of the things that we focused on, in the Memphis game. Our inability to be able to operate a 1-minute drill towards the end of Tulane, not only made everybody mad, it made me mad, so we worked on that, and it showed in the game. I mean, right before half, we drove it all the way down the field in less than a minute and ran out of time to score a touchdown, but should have got points. And then at the end of the game, obviously, we had the 2 1-minute drives that that looked good. We've won a lot of games around here with controlling the ball, controlling the clock, keeping our defense fresh, keeping them off the field, not putting them in bad situations. I'm not going to stop doing that just for the sake of people wanting to see an up-tempo offense. We need to be effective in an up-tempo offense when it's time to be up-tempo. Yeah, if we're sputtering, doing what we're doing, then that's an opportunity to be able to pick things up. We'll have the ability to be able to do that. I'm not going to commit to it full time.
Once again, there you heard Dana Holgorsen not willing to commit to a fast-paced offense. And Dan, before we go ahead to the Clayton Tune clip, where it kind of along those lines with what Dana Holgorsen said. So you heard right there, he's not willing to commit to it. It's going to be interesting when you hear Clayton Tune talk about it, because he said he feels that Houston excels more when they're in an up-tempo style. Now he is going to mirror the comments that Holgorsen said, where they don't want to fully commit to that being their identity. I think it makes sense. It certainly makes sense where they don't kind of want to pigeonhole themselves and, this is what we're going to do every time we have the ball. We're going to push it down the field. But what say you? What were your thoughts on hearing Dana Holgorsen talk right there?
I mean, just like you said, I think you don't want to give up your philosophy, but obvious on film has been working. And also, I think it's truthful when you're saying you don't want to commit to like that being your philosophy and your game plan to do that all quarters. I think it's good at being versatile, having that time management idea, or like running the football and time of possession, control of time of possession, as well as in spurts, speeding it up. So I think it's good to be versatile and have an ability to do both. But I think it's a season by season. I think that's what makes good coaches. You adapt to year by year. You don't just input your system on each team year by year. This is what I do. This is what we do. You adjust, in my opinion, to your team year by year, your personnel on what they do well as a group. And if that's what they do well, then maybe you sprinkle a little bit more of that. And so, and I'm sure he will. I mean, I'm giving him a chance, but I think he don't want to just come out and be like, yeah, we're going to commit to do it. I would like to see more of it, though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an interesting standpoint, I mean, we talked about it during the training camp, that's something, like you said, that Dana Holgorsen really liked to control the time of possession. And it's something that it wasn't on that clip, but he talked about how in the past they've won a lot of games being able to control the time of possession. And so far, just in the 2022 season, Houston has won the time of possession battle in 3 games. They're 2-1 in those games. They won the time of possession battle against UTSA and Rice. And I will say that Rice, they won the time of possession by 10 seconds. So it's really 50-50 with the Owls. And then even though they won the time of possession battle against Tulane, obviously they lost that game in the overtime period. So, I mean, that right there kind of helps build his argument. I agree with you where you pointed out he's not going to flat out and say, hey, Navy, we're going to be throwing the ball all the time. But here's what quarterback Clayton Tune had to say about that same question when it comes to their offense.
2-minute drills and the late game situations, but is that maybe where this offense really flourishes sometimes, when you can do some stuff like that?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think when we pick up the pace, pick the tempo up, I think it is an advantage for us. I feel like we play well in that situation, and it's harder on the defense. They're not able to sub and get the different defenses called that they want to. So it's an advantage for us in that regard. And I think it's something that we're going to do more of, but that's not our identity. We don't want to be the team that, strictly does that type of, that style of offense, but we're definitely going to mix it in some more.
To like change a play, if you see something from the defense, or is that all the coaches that like they call the plays and you don't have that flexibility?
It depends. Certain plays I do, and then certain plays I don't. So it's different week to week, the amount of plays that I have the ability to do so and the amount that I don't. So when we're playing, a team that plays a lot of man coverage in the back end, then I have free reign to check, whatever routes that I want that I feel like would work best, versus that man coverage or leverage or whatever it is. And then there's other times, where we have set plays that we want to, we don't necessarily know what the defense is going to do. So we have plays that, we're going to run regardless. So it just kind of varies week to week.
So they're right there, Dan. That's one of the questions that you had in one of the previous Let's Rage Coops shows. So there you heard it right there. It varies game by game, but Clayton Tune in some instances does have the flexibility to call audibles and change plays, particularly if the defenses are playing man-to-man and he sees something. So that's something that, I mean, you like to hear from your fifth-year quarterback. They have the trust in him there. But going back to the previous portion of that clip where he talks about and being more of a pass-first offense now. Again, he kind of mirrored a little bit of what Holgerson said, but he also said that he feels that they're more effective while they're passing the ball more. And he said that you could see the team trending in that direction. Just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back into my previous comment. I think he's saying it would trend more in that direction because that's what's been successful. Mm-hmm. Again, Brandon Campbell's banged up. And also,
John Henry had that ankle surgery.
He's banged up as well as the other running back. He has a shoulder issue as well, and so all your running backs are banged up. And so I think by necessity, by necessity, they're going to have to end up passing, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I don't think so. But like Clayton said, he don't think that would make them their identity for them to do that. And, I think it's good to be versatile. I think in spurts, if the run is working and they getting drop coverage where it's double safety in the background, in the secondary and their drop safeties, you got 5 in the box, 6 in the box, you got numbers, and then I think they will run the football and be committed to doing that. So, and like you said, it's a game-to-game basis. But I think when it comes down to it, especially with Tank, I think he needs more targets, more receptions, more times for him to make explosive plays. I mean, he's that electric and he's that good. I mean, I watch games with other receivers on Saturdays and Sundays, and where they have receivers like that, playmakers like that, they force feed them to get the ball in their hands in different ways. And I think we haven't really done that much this year.
Absolutely. And I think, right there, the interesting point, I'm going to bring up a comment that was brought up by Michael Amaya, who's one of our viewers from the YouTube portion of our podcast. He's let the offense play what is going to put points on the board. If we want the defense to get rest, maybe they should stop somebody and let them march down the field. Right there,
that offense just goes there now or something.
Yeah, and that's really been the big thing that's kind of hurt Houston overall, that inconsistency. And another question that Michael asked, why has the Cougars, why have they not been effective much at all? And I think, one of the things, and we've talked about it all season, one of the first factors is the penalties that have cost them. There's been multiple times during the season where they get big plays. They get big chunk plays, and then there's a flag on the field, and the holding, it's a costly penalty that has to bring back the play, and usually it ends up putting them in a 2nd and 20, 3rd and 20 situation, which is really hard to overcome. But some of the other things, and Dan, you've touched on this too. I mean, at times, especially if they want to establish the run and really dominate in the trenches, they haven't really been able to have a lot of push consistently throughout the season. That's going to be something that they're going to be looking to excel at during the final 6 games of the regular season.
They're going to have to, because you can't be a one-dimensional offense. And that's where I think Holgerson hinted at when he said it's easier to defend, because they can just play one base coverage and they know you're going to do one thing happy. So once again, I kind of sound like a broken record, but it's good to have a versatile offense. It's good to have a balanced offense, to have the threat of run, whether it's being successful or not, the threat that you're actually running the football, and then you might hit a run for 20 or 30 yards to like Brandon Campbell did in the last game. And that's just to keep the defense honest, to allow them to know that you're going to do it. And then runs like Clayton Tune that he make. And so you still need that run element of the offense versus being just a pass happy, in my opinion. But you do have the air raid. And so I think it's a different variation of the air raid versus what you see with Leach, and where he's just pass every play.